Good afternoon. Today is September 30th, 2022. My name is Elijah Pistana, and I'm with David E. Banks here today with Florida International University at Biscayne Bay campus. We are working on an interview for Miami's Wealth Gap in an oral partnered with Catalyst Miami and Florida International University. So we'll be speaking specifically on the topic of home ownership. Can you tell us your name and where were you born?
My name is David E. Banks. I was born in July 2nd, 19 in the city of Progreso Yoro.
Describe the time you first moved to Miami.
I first moved to Miami on May 13th, 1970. The reason I had moved to Miami is because my grandmother had died and we were living with her. And my mother brought us to the United States. I landed at Miami International Airport. And we landed in Miami International Airport, and then we took 36th Street to 32nd Avenue. And that whole ride was like my dream falling apart. Because as a child, I was told that in the United States, the streets are paved with gold, there's no dirt, there's nothing. And for me to see these things, it was like, wow, this isn't true. And then I went to 32nd Avenue to 50th Street, and then we made a left. That's where my aunt lived. And that just brought everything down. But there was one curious thing. Is that in Honduras, we were used to going outside to the latrine. Well, she had indoor plumbing. And then there was this big white thing sitting in the middle of this room. And I asked my mother, what is that? She said, that is a bathtub. I had never seen a bathtub in my life.
Wow, no. What do you remember about your first impressions of the city?
I've seen a lot of weeds, grass, not grass, but little shrubs, stuff that, and in my mind, I'm expecting paved cities, no dirt. Saw a lot of dirt on the sidewalk, because that was during the time when you can throw stuff out of your car and it's not a big deal. This is 1970, okay? So yeah, that's what I was seeing.
Tell us about the neighborhoods and other places of importance to you in Miami.
Well, I guess the first one would be Brownsville, because that's where I grew up. And in Honduras, I lived in a neighborhood that it was multi-ethnic, whole rainbow. But when we moved to Brownsville, it was strictly African American, and we didn't know the language. But we quickly learned the language and we learned to adapt. That neighborhood was primarily elderly people, middle class, hardworking people. People went to work every day, came back, did their stuff. From there, I moved to North Miami. Okay, this is now as an adult. Okay, and when I moved to North Miami, it was a variety of population. Because I moved to North Miami in 1992. Okay. But then it started quickly becoming more Haitian with the Haitian culture, I had a Haitian wife also, so but that's the way it is. And then I got married again, and I moved to Hollandale, which is a primarily German and mixed culture there. So yes, I've been bouncing back and forth. But I identify the most with brown sub because I guess that's where my heart is.
How has Brownsville changed since your family immigrated from Honduras?
Let me just go back to the apartments where we were at. They were some old military barracks, but they were really strong. And the first thing I saw when I moved there was this elderly family there. About 2 or 3 sisters, because they had their door open, you know. And I was like, wow. And there was a lot of elderly people around there. Now, right before we left, that community had become totally degraded. A lot of people were on crack cocaine, and drugs really tore that community up to the point where those buildings were quickly torn down. And now they have new buildings there. You know, but on one side of the street was the apartments. On the other side of the streets were people living in their private homes. They continued to be there because they had nowhere of just picking up and moving, and they weathered that change in neighborhood. But that neighborhood really had a drastic change due to drugs.
Can you describe communities you're a part of here in Miami, and what is your connection or your relationship with them?
Well, I am part of all of the communities, and I'll explain to you why. I belong to this group called Together for Children, okay? And their job is to prevent gun violence. Not job, their mission is to prevent gun violence, okay? So they have six units. They have one in Homestead, one in Perrine Goulds, one in Overtown, Liberty City. They have one in Overtown. They have one in North Miami. They have another one in Miami Gardens. Okay, and each one of them is independent but together. You know, and our focus is to try and prevent gun violence by bringing services to the community.
When you hear the words generational wealth, what do you think of?
Generational wealth. Wow. It is a word that truly, and it's a concept that truly eludes the African American and to a great deal the Hispanic American community. We didn't know anything about generational wealth. Didn't understand it. Okay. When my mother started, when she came here, we started renting, and we rented for 30 years. And then the opportunity came up for her to purchase a house, a home. Okay. So with the help of her boss, because the boss gave her the down payment, she was able to purchase that home. Okay. Now, that home, when it was purchased for $90,000, I believe. Okay. Right now, that home is worth over $300,000. You understand? Mm-hmm. Now, from that, you can always borrow, or you can do whatever you need to do to finance whatever else you want to do. Why? Because you have that money, that fund in your home that's called, I don't know if I'm saying this word correctly, so you have to correct me. I think it's equity.
Equity and escrow, I think?
Exactly. Because right now, all she owes is $29,000. Think about it. $29,000 out of $300 some thousand. Okay, so if you don't own a home, you are not going to have access to those funds. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. These same people that I was telling you about, their parents own this home, and they have they they purchased their home back in the 70s. The home right now is worth over $500,000. But they put it in reverse mortgage, I think it is. So they borrowed from that. Now the reverse mortgage has now become a rock around the children's neck, but they were able to take out some funds in order to deal with some of their needs. And that's what I think of when I think of generational wealth. And that is what happens with the Hispanic and the Latin community and the Black community or the African American community, where you don't understand this. You're thinking that renting is always best, and it isn't, because you aren't growing any asset. All you're doing, we paid rent for over 20 years, and we didn't have anything to show for it when we got ready to move. Right now, if my mother wants to move out of her home, she's going to have something to show for it. If she continues doing what she has been doing for these past 22 years. That's what I think of generational wealth.
Can you tell us about your path to home ownership?
Here is an interesting thing, okay? It's like my path to credit. Didn't know anything about credit when I was at Florida State, okay? I walked out of class one day, and there were people in the breezeway, and they had tables set up. And they was like, hey, you want a credit card? Yeah. Signed up. Got an American Express, got a Visa, got a Discover. That's when they was just coming out, Capital One. I had a credit card stack like this, without exaggerating. Okay? But I didn't know how to use credit. All I knew was I can. Okay, so my credit went bad quickly. Okay. So now it comes time to purchase a home. Now, two things you have to have when you purchase a home. You have to have the down payment, and you have to have good credit. You know what I'm saying? Well, I was working, I was at a nice job, but I didn't have the credit. Now, what do? Well, in the inner cities, you got the hookups. I was fortunate enough, okay, that my hookup was my cousin, because I used to do work for her. I used to go. She was an amputee. She had diabetes. She later on died from diabetes. But I used to go to her home not every day, every weekend, every week, and do her paperwork and pay her bills and take care of her legal issues for her. So one day I asked her if she could be my co-signer on a mortgage. She says, yes, David, anything for you. And that's that. It still affects me when I think about that, because that's a hell of an ask, but she did that for me, and that's how I was able to buy my first home.
From your experience and observations, can you describe the housing situation in Miami?
I think it's mad, but this isn't just here now. This started I could be wrong, but back in 2008 or 2003, and this has just been drawing on since then, because you have a house that, it's like my mother's house. Let's steal my mother's house. My mother's house, she bought that house in 2000. 2000. When I say bought, I mean, financed it, because she hasn't finished paying. Okay, 2000. So she bought that house in 2000, and it was $90,000 to now being $300,000. How? She hasn't done anything to make it go up to $300,000. It's just what's going on in the market, and that is where the problem comes, because people start spending these excess amount of money for a home. If my neighbor's home is purchased at $150,000, so my home is going to be worth $150,000 or more, right there in that neighborhood. And then that's just what's been going on. And then what's been crazy now has been the renter market. Because now landlords feel like they can double your rent, triple your rent without any care. And they can. And that's why I am so happy that Mayor Levine Cava passed this thing that you have to have notification, and it's just a certain percentage that they can raise those rents. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of politics involved with what's going on in the housing market. I'm sorry to say that I don't think the prices are going to go back down. They're just going to keep going forward. But I think that we strongly need to have some regulations, some rules, some laws, some checks and balances to get things back in control again. You know?
Okay. Let's.
And can I just add something there?
Yes, you can.
And that's why I was so happy to hear about what is the name of this bank? It's blue and white.
Chase?
Bank of America.
Bank of America is blue and red.
Blue and red.
Blue and red Bank of America.
Yeah, where they came out with this thing with no down payment to help people gain their first property. Mm-hmm. That was really fantastic from my point of view, because once you gain your first property, you can develop credit from there and you can build from there. But if you don't have property, if you don't have anything, it's very hard to build from.
Tell us more about what is affecting availability and quality of housing in Miami.
I don't necessarily think that there's a availability problem. There's a financing problem. If you don't have the money, you can't purchase these homes or these buildings, the apartments. A lot of corporations are coming in and they're just buying up properties and they're sitting them there, empty. And then you have people who can't afford to get in there because they've jacked up prices so much. Okay, so that's one. Quality. I really don't know about. Well, it depends on where you are. Because if you're in the inner city, I'll give you an example. When I first came to this country in 1970, right, in Brownsville, it was all African American, completely. Okay? Right now, I can go to that same neighborhood, and that neighborhood is totally integrated. Something that would have never happened before. Why? Because people found the inner cities cheaper, and they were forced out of these expensive places. So they're coming there, okay? And it's like a push. I push you, you push back, and it just keeps pushing. So that affects the quality. You have people who've never been in that neighborhood, have no roots to that neighborhood, but the only thing that brings them to that neighborhood is cheaper. So they go in that neighborhood and they start building it up, jacks up the prices, and it affects other people. Now, it affects some for the positive because they own, but for those that rent, it affects them negatively.
What are some barriers to home ownership that you see in Miami?
If we're going to go there, okay, we're going to have to deal with redlining. Okay. Do you understand? And as a subset of redlining is that if you're going to purchase a property in a non-desirable area, then what you're going to pay for that property is going to be much higher than what that property is actually worth. Because in order for the bank to finance that, they're going to finance that at a higher rate, higher interest rate. It's like what's going on right now with interest rates. Interest rates just kept going up and going up. I was looking at the news yesterday, right? And a home, a $300,000 home that you would have purchased 6 months ago or 8 months ago for $1,300 a month. Right now, based on the most recent increase in interest rates, you will be paying $1,900 for that. It's the same home. The only thing is that the interest rates have gone up. Interest rates affect the African American, the Latino community more severely because the credit scores are not as high. So therefore, let's say a person with good credit would be paying $1,900. A person with bad credit would be paying $2,500 a month. That prices you out. That kicks you out. You know. So yeah, it's a. And people think I'm crazy, but I think it's a systemic situation. That is the reason why I am so happy for Bank of America getting involved with that. No, I think it's no deposit they make it very accessible for everybody to purchase their first home. You know, and I think I can be dead wrong. I think that a great majority, once they've gotten their first home, they are back on firm ground. Mm-hmm. You know, if they follow what they need to do, pay the rent, pay their bills, and whatever, they're on firm ground. And you can jump from one home to another and keep growing in the American dream. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have any home, you're in a rickety boat. You know, and it's wobbling all over the place. And month to month, you might be out. So, yeah.
Would you say that those who have been incarcerated have equal accessibility to the housing market?
No, I don't think there's equal accessibility. I'm sorry for using these terms so loosely. We're talking about normal people who have no incarceration, who have a job, and they go to work back and forth and whatever. You know, they may have things on their credit. Normal people. Mm-hmm. Now you bring the elephant in the room with someone who's returning home from incarceration. Okay, has no credit, depending on the time he's been away or she's been away, mm-hmm. has no finances, and the minute they run their record, incarceration comes up. And depending on the incarceration, depending on incarceration, you're restricted as far as where you can live. Okay? But let's say you aren't restricted, you're just incarcerated. Well, then a lot of places, as far as renting, don't want you around. Mm-hmm. You know? They don't. This society believes in punishing people way after they have completed everything that the courts have mandated. Okay, so you did something wrong, no problem. Come back. Instead of actually helping these individuals to get on their feet, they put all these blocks that prevent them from getting on their feet fully. And you have to have a Herculean effort to try and overcome all of these things. Because in order to get back on your feet, you're going to need to be employed. Sometimes you can't be employed in what you know, in the skills that you have. They want you to go work at Burger King, McDonald's, and those are fine jobs. But if you have particular skills, why shouldn't you be able to go back and work in those skills? Do you still want to punish this individual? The judge already gave him a sentence. Okay, so why do we have to continue to beat on him or her? That's the problem.
Can you describe how any historical events such as hurricanes or the COVID-19 pandemic affected Miami's housing?
Let's go back to Hurricane Andrew. Okay. 1926, prior to Hurricane Andrew, was the last major hurricane that hit Dade County. Okay. Move forward to Hurricane Andrew, and Hurricane Andrew tore up the South. Okay. So most of those people moved north. Okay. And that created people were just losing everything. They just lost everything, and they had to start all over again. COVID, I hate to say this because it makes me sound callous, but a lot of people failed to pay their rent. They were unable to pay their rent. So the landlords are humans too. They need to pay their rent. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they weren't getting paid their rent. It caused them to go into foreclosure or have problems with their own credit. So now, how are we going to deal with that? Once we can get back on our feet, we start raising these rents. And I believe that is a direct consequence of the COVID situation. Sound like an old man. Of COVID situation. You understand? So, yes, natural disasters and medical disasters have caused severe effects in housing. Yeah.
Based on your experience, do you believe homeownership is a human right?
I believe it should be. Okay. I believe that in a society that truly wants to see the members of its society thrive, it is important to help them get that first step. That takes us back to 40 acres and a mule, the promise that was made to freed slaves, right? What was that promise for? In order to help you get on your feet and to prosper. It was understood that land ownership and an ability to develop that land would get you on your feet. But that was quickly taken away. And this might be my cynical view on it, but it was given to European and white immigrants as opposed to the slaves who were here, who built up this country and helped in order to help them get on their feet. No, the European immigrants were given land. They were given free education through the land grant colleges to teach them how to cultivate and develop their land. They were given favorable loans in order to get those lands on their feet, get the equipment and all that stuff. The African American community has never had that. They have never had a sincere opportunity to grow. What they have done is they've put us in these communities that quickly became ghettos. Okay, and they didn't support it the way it should have been supported, because if they had supported it the right way, right, it would have been, okay, you could stay here for a certain period of time, and then we will transition you into your own home. But that never was the case. Okay, so you have people who are growing up there generationally in that environment, not knowing the skills that they need to stand on their own. And that was done purposely. And all we have to do, you don't have to take my word for it, just go back historically and see. You go back and see with the redlining, with not giving loans, with all of those, in Spanish we say trabas. It's fences to prevent people from moving on. And then you say, oh, it's their fault. No, it's not their fault. If you truly know the system, and if you truly take a deep look at the system, you understand it isn't their fault. This was concocted. This was made this way in order to keep this population down.
Can you tell us about any organization or group of individuals that are working towards solutions in better housing?
Well, the one that I am most familiar with is Catalyst Miami. Catalyst Miami has workshops. They have groups of people who come together to educate you. And see, when you have a problem, it's important to know where the problem started and the history of the problem. It didn't just fall out of the sky. And that's what this group does. That's what Catalyst does. They also advocate in the legislature, for people in housing and fair housing. So the one that impressed me the most is Catalyst Miami.
David, what do you do for a living?
I volunteer. I volunteer at a mental health agency. I volunteer with people who don't have knowledge of the system, and I charge them a cup of coffee or a bottle of water for my services. Because my thing is that not having the knowledge to access services or benefits or whatever causes a great deal of problems for people. Even as simple as making a phone call to Social Security. First thing I already know is that I have to address with patience. It's going to take a while, but I can resolve my issues, But a lot of people who come from different countries don't know these things. They don't know how to apply for food stamps. They don't know how to apply for Medicaid. They don't know. I just had a situation. A man got a summons to do jury duty. He didn't understand that, so he let it go. I thought, can't do that. That's very important. Now he's a citizen now because he's already receiving summons to be on the jury, but he didn't understand the importance or the severity of it, and how this affects not only him but everybody in his society. So yes, that's what I do.
Is there any advice that you would like to give to the future generations who see this oral history?
Well, understand that you have roadblocks. Understand that there's a lot of stuff that is playing against you. And we're going to strictly speak about home ownership. Once you've decided that you want to own a home or you want to own property, you have to get serious with your credit. Okay? Yes, all of these things are playing against you, but you still can do something about it. Okay? You can do it. How do you do that? Getting your credit fixed. First of all, understanding what your credit is. There are many agencies that you can go to. They'll help you clean your credit. And start saving. Start saving. Even if it's $1 a week or $2 a week, set your goals. Because it's easy to say, oh, the whole system is against me. Yeah, it's against you. But there's crack in that system. And you can access them.
Are there any additional comments you may have for us today?
No, just be like a ship on the ocean. It's a huge ship. The ocean is even bigger, but the ship still rides the ocean. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to come against us. Just learn to ride the ocean.